Hey everybody, welcome, and please start taking your seats. And Christos Manios from Prodyna is going to talk to us about using Git in an unorthodox way in your team. Amazing title. I don't know if you read the description of Christos' talk. There's this I don't know if you did this intentionally, Christos. It says here...
Always intentionally.
It says here, why Git rebase helps and how much time will you save if you use it. This is probably a trigger statement for some of you. I am a fan of Git rebase personally. Yeah, I'm on the rebase team.
It's a point to start the war, actually.
So without further ado, a round of applause for Christo. And Christo, please.
Thank you. Right, so welcome everyone. I'm Christos Manios. I'm a software engineer. I'm a resource, as it was described in yesterday's keynote, still. So, and we're going to discuss about some ways to use Git in our team or ourselves in general. It's not always being in a team. So someone might ask himself, okay, why this crazy person is using this strange title? Because orthodox, it's sometimes related to religion. It's a Greek word, actually. I use this title on purpose, of course, because sometimes we use Git. Actually, we use Git or any other source control system in our everyday lives. And we use it without actually giving much attention to it. It's a tool. We commit our changes. We collaborate with others. And sometimes this collaboration might become strange, difficult. And it can become a burden for others. For us, it might be simple, but some others might find it difficult to collaborate with us. So after using Git personally for 10 years, to be honest, I never looked back. Switching from SVN to Git, I have spotted as an observer and as a user some things that, let's say, you can use as a traditional guidelines. That's why the orthodox. But it's not, let's say, a guideline or a rule that you have to use. Sometimes, depending on the case that you use it, they might apply to your case or they might not. So sometimes some things are generally approved, generally accepted, hence the orthodox. But sometimes if you are in a very grave condition, in a very strange situation you have to tackle with an emergency, you might have an unorthodox way of using Git, hence the title. So some theoretical stuff, some historical stuff. Git was created by a very smart guy, Linus Torvalds, in order to track the changes into the Linux kernel back in 2005. It is meant to be, and I will read from the slides, a distributed version control system. And I have underlined this word because it is, when you have distributed things, it means that many people, small teams or bigger teams, can become involved. Hence, because you have people and not systems, this can become quite complex. Of course, all of us know it is a CLI tool. It's super fast. It supports non-linear development, so you can create as many branches as you want. It is super easy and super light, comparing to SVN and other older source control systems. Of course, it has a very vast support by the IDEs that we use. We can see some examples. And it has a very nice book. It's open source. It's free to read the online version. You can buy a hard copy, of course, with some amount of money, some price. And if you are really interested, there is a nice YouTube video talk of Linus Torvalds explaining back in 2007, if I recall correctly, why he built Git and which were the problems that he had to create a new system. So, as I mentioned, Git is a tool, but we use Git in order to advertise, in many double quotes, in many high marks, our changes to other people, in essence. We just don't commit a file in order to save it somewhere. We want someone to have a look at it, to review it. We want to include it into something else. So actually, although it is just a CLI tool that we use, it's actually a team sport. And when we are in a team, smaller or bigger, we have some challenges. It can be different personalities, different ages, different time zones. So you may commit something in Greek time zone and someone might read your commit or your pull request after some hours in China, okay? Someone might drink a different coffee and can see your commit with another, or he might had an argument with his wife before he sees your changes. And he might have a different souvlaki if you are between Thessaloniki and Athens, that we have a constant conflict, or a different, whatever you like, choose it yourself, okay? So it's more than a tool, actually, because the way that we use it makes it something more. And of course, locally, when someone starts with Git, he will need to set up properly his Git client, okay? So you will have your Git config file either locally in a repository or your global Git config in etc in Linux, or Git bash also in etc in Windows. So one thing to remember is that we have to constantly pay attention to the context of where we are using Git. For instance, I use Git for my personal projects, maybe for helping my family, and also I'm using it for building projects in my company. So I have to differentiate between my global Git configuration, put always my email that I use globally, and for specific projects to have specific names and emails. I have a different email for my company, a different email for my personal life. And we have to be careful about that, because many times we see in repositories a person that is called by different emails or different usernames, and this can break a pull request review if it has strict rules. It can break the let's say the analytics of the repository. It can break many things, and it can be a visual, let's say, hindrance to someone who reads it. Okay. Fortunately, Git has mail map. You can search for it to fix it, then map all of them into one. And continuing with local setup, we have to be very careful. Sometimes we need to use SSH keys or HTTPS tokens. Be careful to distribute correctly your SSH keys and your HTTPS tokens. Maybe you can use for personal projects something different to your work. And these are two ways of configuring globally your ID underscore RSA key by default, and then you can override with SSH command in every project if you want to use a different SSH key. Sometimes it's not very useful to use the same SSH key for everything, because if you get someone steals your SSH, he can get access to pretty much everything. Consequently, the same appeals to the HTTPS configuration, okay? For HTTPS, be careful. Sometimes it is not very advised, because you have to create a token, not put your plain password. Of course, GitLab and GitHub allow us to create tokens, fine-grained tokens instead of passwords, and they discourage us to use HTTPS. But in essence, be careful with this sensitive data. And for Git branching strategies, when the team has to collect and review and decide, please choose one. There are many of them. Depending on your background, if you have people that use SVN, you can use something like trunk-based. Pick anything you like, but regarding that, you can either use an existing strategy, you can create your own, or you can create a mix. But whatever you decide, please follow this strategy and educate your junior team members to follow it. Because if someone doesn't use it, it will become a burden. And of course, we live in a dynamic profession. We work in a dynamic profession, so review constantly and change it if needs be. So afterwards, we have strategy. Then it's time for us to commit. And what should we commit? We have to check what your language, your project needs, and create, please, a proper git ignore. Sometimes I had a situation where there was a project, I was not involved, but the person had committed the entire node modules directory. It was an AngularJS project, and it took us some time then to delete the commit, etc., etc. You can use also a proper git commit. You can decide as a team or yourself, if you are alone, what should be the commit message structure. And you can use, there are, for example, 3 ways: the Jira issue style, the conventional commit style that started from some JavaScript projects like Angular, or you can create your custom-owned commit message. Like, for instance, Jira style is you put the issue number, space or colon, and then commit message. This is the first one. And for the conventional commit style, you can create feature, chore, docs, whatever. But please stick to that. And why do you need to stick to that? Because you have to be able yourself to understand what did you do after 1 day, after 1 month, after 1 year, what you actually did. I was in a project, I'm still actually, that there are no requirements, and we have to understand from the commit log messages why on earth something exists in the code, because the code doesn't give any clue, actually. So if you want to write your story of your life, you can write it. If you want to write a very laconic, as we say, a very Spartan way, you can write it, but please write it in a way that you will understand first, and then the others can understand too, okay? And of course, if you have temporary changes or context switching between projects, if you are in a microservices project, please use git stash or use a different branch and rebase afterwards. We will talk about rebase, but please use it. And I have seen, although we are in 2023, I have seen people just copying files and pasting files just to do temporary changes. Experiment with git stash, experiment with branching. It's so easy. You can just take copies of your repository and play with it, but don't try to do copies of your files. And we are in the pull request phase. Please be kind when you review someone's pull request, okay? Because we all want someone to be kind when he reviews our changes. And regardless the strategy that you select in order to merge your changes, please keep that as well and put it as a rule. GitLab and GitHub have rules how to do that automated. And also, sometimes we might need to forbid commits if they don't follow some rules. Like, you can put pre-commit hooks. You can stop the number of commits. I had a colleague who told me that, you know, this pull request has 60 commits. And I told him, why? He said, because this is the way to show you that I was working every day. And I was like, okay, don't worry. Nobody will blame you if you don't commit for 1 day. And also, in the end, we will just take all the changes and check them. We will not check every commit. It will take ages. And also, sometimes in many number of commits, we can have files being created, deleted again and again. And you please take a look that you don't have hard-coded secrets. Okay? There are many automated tools to do that and to check that you don't have. And then git push force. Whatever you feel like about git push force, please do it with care. I would suggest that you don't use it on main, master, or and you protect your main branches that you usually merge. If you want, you can play in other and see how it is behaving. But in general, try not to do that. And GitLab and GitHub have protected branches for that. And if you are not sure what you are doing, please don't use the force, okay? Star Wars, please don't use the force. Just be careful when you do that. In a previous project that I worked on, I had a person who accidentally committed with force push, and he didn't pull any changes for 1.5 weeks, and it took us 2 or 3 hours with git reflog to fix the repository because I was asked to assist another team. Okay, so please don't overcome with that. And then we go to Simeon antilegomen, our moot point, or our point of dispute. And git rebase, I guess most of us know git rebase. Use it with care. I personally like it, but if you don't like it, try to do your commits properly. These are pictures from real repositories. On the right, on the left, we have git rebase. We have linear history. On the right, we have 20 commits. Out of them, only 7 commits are really useful. The other are merged conflicts, as you can see with yellow, and it's like spaghetti. Decide what do you like most, okay? 4 more minutes. So git rebase has a very nice way, okay? Can we reset the counter or put a... 4 more minutes. It has a very nice way to do that in command line, and it doesn't bite, okay? You can try it locally. And you have to be careful with that because, okay, you can mess things, but it can make your life easier. And think about it. If you spend a few seconds or 1 or 2 minutes in rebasing every day by pulling your changes, you might end up not spending time in order to merge your conflicts for hours after 1 week that you finish with your feature. So if you add the seconds or minutes that you will spend in git rebase every day, I don't think that they will ever reach the hours that you will have to manage to fix your dependencies. And then suddenly you have to clone a repository or you pull changes and you expect to have Mulan, but instead you have Chempo, okay? And something is really wrong. This is a screenshot from a real repository. It's 380 megabytes, and it was only a Java repository. So I had a look in GitLab. These are real statistics from GitLab, but it was 98% Java with some Kotlin and some Docker file. And I was like, okay, why does it weigh so much? Okay, and I searched a little bit in the web, and I found a very nice tool called Git Sizer. And I found out that if you see in the maximum size, it has a Java profiler file of 800 megabytes. So be careful what you commit. And if, for any case, this happens again, add a rolling git ignore file, inform the team of what happened, and if possible, you can remove your problematic commit with git rebase or with BFG report cleaner. It is a very nice tool that can scan your whole history and rearrange things. But be careful. The team has to delete and clone the repository again because it will rewrite history. Okay, so you will not have a very large repository, but you will have to clone again, and be careful with that. But please be careful to add your binary files in a git ignore so accidentally you don't commit them. And I found about this repository, and the problem was 3 years ago, and it was in a commit that had in a pull request, pardon, that had 20 commits. Nobody had noticed because the committer had created the file in one commit, and in the next file he or she deleted it. But still, it's inside the repository. It's compressed, but still resides there. So if you need a repository big enough, use Git LFS with Git large file storage. And the last but not least that I want to show you is when you have multiple repositories. We live in a microservice era, okay? Or we might be committers in multiple repositories. So how do you find something in multiple repositories? Some propose to add everything in IntelliJ and use IntelliJ to search it, or use the operating system search, or use a grep command in Linux, or use GitLab and GitHub search. I show you something different. It's called source graph. It can scan repositories for multiple sources. It can index them locally. It is actually a server, and then you can create Lucene query commands that you can search your repositories upon. It was created by 2 ex-Googlers. So it has a nice UI, and with nice queries, you can find your results. And what kind of results I can have? I want, for instance, to find the word topic in Java integration tests. So as you can see, I write this nice small query and it finds it. Or I want to find projects that use common three-lang Java library, okay? The best thing of it is that you can use these queries to create automated pull requests and patch repositories in batch. So you can create 20 pull requests to batch your changes. So in conclusion, please define contribution guidelines in your team and learn the CLI. Git is a CLI. You might have your fancy, nice integrations in your IDEs, but still you have to know what is this nice clicky thing that you do in IntelliJ in Visual Studio Code doing. And please try to have rules to safeguard your team and automate some checks. And of course, communication between the team is the best. And last but not least, as Mrs. Coco Chanel said, simplicity is the keynote of all true elegance. So someone might say, okay, Chris, are you joking? You said so many details. These details, if you take them and you create a rule that you can automate it, they will work as a no-brainer after a point. So if you define them from the beginning, everything will run smoothly and simply in your team and in your repositories. That's it. Thank you. And sorry for the overtime.
Good stuff.